Hello, everyone. This is the last notes or the last part of Unit 4, Part 3, which is behavior, animal behavior. Notice that it's still Unit 4, so we're still looking at it from a perspective of evolution and fitness and natural selection. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So the two questions that we're going to focus on are what are the benefits of being a group and why do birds of a feather flock together? So today we're going to have an introduction to behavior and communication. So the ethology, by definition, is the study of an organism's behavior in an ecosystem. That's what we're going to be looking at for the next week or so. A behavior is everything an animal does and how it does it. It lets the organisms respond rapidly and adaptively to stimuli from its environment, usually in a beneficial way. So some examples here are a plant, not an animal, but still, a plant can bend towards a light. That's still a type of behavior. A cat comes when you use a can opener. The pufferfish inflates, like you see in the picture, when it feels threatened. And the toad releases poison when grabbed. So behavioral responses can be different for individuals or groups. The benefits to survival can also vary. So we're going to be looking at animal behavior and how it helps it increase its fitness. All right, so first if we look at individual behavior, these are responses to stimuli, and they need to detect, they need to detect and be able to respond to stimuli as a part of surviving in whatever environment they live in. And so there's two different ways they can get that stimuli or that message that they need to do something. Internally, such as hungry, thirsty, there's some kind of internal pain that they need to slow down. Maybe they're running too fast or something like that, so they can respond appropriately. And then the external stimuli, so maybe the sun gets hidden behind clouds, and so the light changes. If there's a shadow of a bird overhead, and this is a small mouse, then that's external stimuli that it can run under a tree, something like that. Oh, there's a picture. There's another picture. Okay. If we look at, let's see, some individual behaviors occur in cycles. The behavior may occur daily, monthly, seasonally, or annually. So if we look at circadian rhythm, this is the daily cycle of activity. We are diurnal, which means that we spend our waking hours in the daytime, as opposed to this bat. He is nocturnal. Bats are awake during the nighttime. So that's an example of circadian rhythm. That's naturally their biological clock. They don't even have to think about it. During hibernation, if we look at the bear here, an animal enters a seasonal dormant state. So that would be an example of seasonal cycle. And again, it's just an innate behavior. It just does it naturally. It's in its genes. Okay, so I said the word innate, which an innate behavior doesn't require any learning or experience. It's performed correctly the first time. Some examples of that. You can also hear it as the word instinct, a complex inborn behavior. Let's see. They're relatively inflexible, something that you're born with. An example in humans is the baby swimming reflex. If you put a newborn baby in water right out of the birth canal, they'll naturally make a swimming motion with their arms and legs, which is pretty fascinating. And reproduction and movement are also an innate behavior. We don't have to think about, do we know how to reproduce? It's just done. It's already in our genes. much like the sea turtles going towards the water. They don't have to think about it, they just naturally go there. That's an innate behavior. And if you think about it in terms of evolution, the ones that don't have that are born without that instinct, they don't make it to the water, well, they don't survive. And so those genes don't go on to the next generation. So again, we're connecting it back to evolution and back to natural selection. Okay, individuals also demonstrate learned behaviors. So habituation. Habituation occurs when an animal learns to ignore a repeated stimulus. This enables animals to disregard unimportant stimuli. Could you imagine if these little birds kind of twitched or wanted to shelter themselves with every rustle of leaves, with every lizard that goes by? That would be a really big waste of energy. So it is beneficial to them as a species to be able to learn what are the things that we need to pay attention to survive, and what is, like, those would be the harmful things, and what is just background noise, basically. An example for us is the feeling of clothes rub against our legs, or jewelry on our body, or something like that. I'm really sorry, I have something in my throat. Okay, and then imprinting refers to a critical period of time early in an animal's life when it forms attachment and develops a concept of its own identity. So the example here is the ducks following their mother. For humans, when a baby is born, when the baby gets that skin to skin time, the mother pulls the baby up on her bare chest, or also the father. They do this in hospitals now. Well, they'll ask the father to remove his shirt and hold the naked baby on his chest, because that's imprinting. And so what will happen is that a surge of hormones that gets released in both the mother and the father, and they learn each other's smells. And so they're emotionally and chemically attached from that day forward. And so you can see how that would be beneficial for the baby and for the species as a whole, because that imprinting will cause a more, I don't want to say it, a more severe, tight bond, which will enable the child to successfully grow and continue the species. So again, that's how we can relate it back to evolution and the continuation of the species. All right, next one is the individuals also demonstrate learned behaviors. If we look at imitation, this is when animals learn by observing behaviors of others. The birds here, young male songbirds, learn songs by listening to adult males. That is not an innate behavior, which I think is really interesting. So it'd be interesting to listen to birds' songs over time and see how that's changed. It's kind of like a game of telephone, maybe. Children learning to talk, that is imitation as well. Conditioning is a type of associative learning, which, if you think of a child with a hot stove, that kid will put his hand on the hot stove or hot pan, and they're not going to do that again because they're associating that hot stove with pain. And so they're learning what to avoid. Birds with bad tasting food, if they taste a berry or a certain type of leaf, they'll learn the pattern and they'll associate that pattern with the poor taste. And then also training a dog. Usually, remember, you use treats to train a dog. So whenever behavior, let's look at a picture. The dog's shaking the hand of the person. If she gives him a treat every time, he's going to associate shaking his hand with a reward. And so he'll want to do it more. So that's conditioning. I don't know if you've also heard of Pavlov's dogs. That falls under conditioning. Okay, so if we look at individual versus group behavior. So some species spend the majority of their lives in social groups, while others do not. So if we look at this panda bear hanging on that tree so cutely, versus the penguins, those live in a group. So why does the panda bear live alone and the penguins live in a group? Let's see, some examples there of species that prefer individual behavior versus group behavior. So animals perform behaviors whose benefits outweigh their cost. Behaviors evolve only if they improve fitness. So if it became more beneficial for the panda bear to live in a group, then over many generations, that's what would occur. Let's see. It would result in increased survivorship, the number of individuals that survive from one year to the next, and it would have to increase reproductive rates. Let's look at the benefits of living with a group. So group behavior is defined as interactions among individuals, normally within the same species, that are usually beneficial to one or more of the individuals. So there has to be a benefit of some kind. Group behavior depends on communication for their social interactions. So here we have the different types of communications. We have sounds. The elephant's low rumbles to warn. That helps them survive because they can avoid predators. Scents. Deers secrete pheromones to mate. That's interesting. That's a typo. They secrete pheromones to attract a mate or to alert a mate that they're in heat. Displays. The bees do a little waggle dance to signal food is near. They kind of rumble and shake their back end. And touches. So the chimpanzees at the bottom often groom each other to show friendship. And actually, a little bit more about the chimpanzees, they'll use the touches to show friendship, but then they'll also share food with those other chimps that they've shown that friendship with, not so much with the ones that they don't form those friendships. So again, that's how it relates back to the increased survivorship. Okay, so here are the video clips. You have a piece of paper with all of these questions. So you don't need to write anything down. And I've posted the video clips underneath on Google Classroom. And you'll get to turn those in. Oh, that's something else. Okay. Have a great weekend, everyone.